Of course, we'd also like to extend a very warm welcome to our new president, Dr. Frank Chong. As I mentioned earlier, it's not very often that we welcome a new president to SRJC. So at this time, please join me in a warm and welcoming round of applause as Dr. Chong makes his way to the podium.
Good morning, everybody. God, I feel like I'm at a sales seminar. I really want to thank Michelle. I understand this is her last official function as the staff development coordinator, and she's done a marvelous job. Let's give her a round of applause. Thank you. Well, I was preparing my speech for today. I talked to a large number of people about, well, what should I talk about? Should I be formal? Should I prepare one of these red speeches like I've been doing for the last 2 years throughout the country on behalf of community colleges and administration? And I consulted some experts. I talked to some of the speech coaches and had a few sessions with them. And they said, well, we looked at your forum that you did, and we went back on the internet now. There's no secrets. We saw some of your speeches, and we just felt that, you got the job, so you just continue to do what you're doing. And be yourself. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to try to come here today and share with you a little bit about who I am, what I see for the college, and what I see where I think we need to go in order to maintain the greatness of Santa Rosa JC. And you are a great college. In doing my homework in preparation for the job, I talked to people on a national level, on a state level, on a local level, and without exception, they all said, Santa Rosa is a plum. And I said, a Santa Rosa plum, not just any plum. And it's a plum because it's had a wonderful board that's really invested in the college and in the community. And the first thing you know about looking for a job is who's going to be your boss, And there's a funny thing, when you turn 50, you really don't want to put up with a lot of stuff that you were willing to do in your earlier years. So my last boss was either the president or Arnie Duncan or one of these folks, and I did some research on them, and I felt comfortable I could work for them. But my next boss, I wanted to have the same level of respect and admiration for. And I think presidents, when they go looking for jobs, the first thing they look at, and they might tell you, well, we look for great faculty, we look for a great community. No, you look for a board because you're 4 votes from being on the street, And one of my former bosses, Willie Brown, who's going to be coming up here next week, I think, taught me a lesson in mathematics. He said, Frank, when you're in the legislature, you got to count to 41, which of 80. And when you're a college president, you got to count to 4 if you have 7 members on your board. So I looked at the board and I did some research on them, and many of them are graduates here. Many of them have had parents who have been on the board, and many of them are all of them, without exception, are invested in the success of the college. And I also had an opportunity to talk to Dr. Agrella. He was very gracious, and this is while I was an applicant, and I think he extended this same opportunity for other candidates. Said, Frank, this is a good place. You have great faculty. I think we have some great facilities. We have a great community. And so far what I found is that to be true, is that this college, unlike any other college I've been to, and I've been to lots of colleges in the last 2 years as the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Community Colleges, is one of the jewels of the system. And I think all of you in the audience have had a little bit and a lot to do with that greatness. And I came here in my letter to the committee saying, I see my job as the next president of Santa Rosa Junior College is how do you make a great college better? Which is often more difficult than how do you take a dysfunctional college and make it functional. And I've worked in those colleges as well to some degrees of success. And in my time here, the other day I was in the gymnasium shooting hoops. I hope Coach McMillan doesn't mind that I come here at 7 o'clock in the morning and do that. And I was in the locker room to get a basketball, and I was talking to John McMullen. His father worked in that locker room his entire career. His son had just left to go to Santa Rosa High School and was helping his dad out. And spending time with John and talking about the pride he has in where he works and this community that he lives in was very, very insightful to me and very inspiring as someone who sees, wow, this is just not a place you work. This is not just a place, this is not just a community college. This is not just a beacon of the community. This is a very, very special place. And, you know, Galen could tell you better about chemistry, but when I look at chemistry, I look at the chemistry of a college. It's called, and sometimes the jargon is the campus climate, you know. And the campus climate here is very positive. In spite of the fact we are going through unprecedented challenges as a college, as a nation, as a global community, and you all read the papers, you go on the internet, and you all have different theories about why it is we're experiencing what we're experiencing at this time in our history. And I would say that I see again my job and my challenge is to figure out a way to empower all of us in this college and in this community to maintain that greatness. So I use the term, and again, it could be a physics term or a basketball term, we have to pivot. We have to pivot to respond to the changes of the world, of our community, and the state. And we need to do that, in my estimation, very quickly. Because in order to do the things that you've done to effectuate change and change students' lives and prepare our students for the workforce of Santa Rosa, Sonoma County, Petaluma, and let me give a shout out to the people in Petaluma who are there. I really want to acknowledge them. I'm a Petaluma resident and proud of it. I live on 922 B Street. There's no privacy in this job. I was having breakfast today, usually in the cafeteria, and the cafeteria is closed today, but whenever I have breakfast in there, I intentionally have breakfast in there because I want to see what students are doing, and invariably they'll come up to me and say, "Are you the new president of Santa Rosa Junior College?" And I said, "Yes," and they said, "Do you mind if I sit and bend your ear and tell you what I like about the college?" And this morning I was having breakfast at the place Go Cheese across the street because it was closed, the cafeteria is closed, and Mike from Administrative Center of Justice says, "Are you the new college president? Do you mind if I pull up a chair?" So there is no privacy as president of Santa Rosa Junior College, and Dr. Grella is a celebrity. He's a rock star in this community, so now I really understand what it means. But getting back to what I was saying about the pivoting and positioning the college for a place of greatness, one of the things I need to do is listen. I've tried to do that by meeting as many people as I can, whether they're students, classified, faculty, and the external community, of course, our industry partners, our educational partners in the K-12, Sonoma State, all of the different institutions within this community. And again, what I've also tried to do is use technology and model the way in terms of encouraging all of you to use technology, not as a replacement for what you do in the classroom, but as an enhancement and as a tool. And what I did was put out a strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats analysis. I sent it to community so-called leaders. You're all leaders, but I sent it, I couldn't really read 3,000 of them, so I read about 150 of department chairs, administrators, the heads of the unions, classified staff, the students, and what I asked was 4 questions. What are the 3 strengths of Santa Rosa JC that you see? Second question, what are the 3 challenges that you see? Third question, what are the 3 things that you think I need to focus on as your president? And the last question, number 4, and to me the most important, is what are you going to do to support the college so that we can accomplish those 3 things you want me to work on? And I'll share with you some of the findings. I was going through them, and I really want to thank Casey Graney, who I think is one of the best institutional researchers that we have in the community college system. And she does an excellent job. And she's also a neighbor around the block, so I have to be nice to her just in case I need sugar or eggs. So I would say the top 3 things all of you could probably guess. There was very little variance or deviation. I have to be careful with Warren Rood as the union president and Terry Schell as the academic senate president. They're both mathematicians, so I have to use my terms very carefully. But there was little variance in what are the 3 strengths. First of all, the people of the college, the quality, dedication of the faculty, staff, and administrators, the talent that you have in this room. 2, the facilities. The facilities are second to none. This is one of the most beautiful campuses that many of my colleagues and others who've come here say, this does not feel like a community college campus. This feels like a 4-year campus that you see at a private liberal arts college. It could be at Bowdoin, it could be at Colby in Maine, it could be at Amherst in Massachusetts. It could be one of those beautiful colleges that students pay $40K plus a year, and some of you in the audience are doing that right now for your kids. So you know, when you go to these campuses, we have facilities both in the technology area, architecturally, that second to none. And the third is the community support. The community supports this college. Nowhere in the country is there an endowment of $30+ million in the college endowment. Nowhere is there a Doyle Trust exists, as far as I know, for community college students. So those are the 3 strengths. The 3 challenges. The budget, duh, okay? Money, the budget. Number 2 is communication. And we need to communicate better with one another. That's a challenge at any college I've been to. It's a challenge at the Department of Education where I worked at. It's a challenge wherever you go, whether you're in the corporate sector. Communications is very important. How do we convey and communicate with one another, both with all the electronic media that we have? How do we do it in person? How do we do it in meetings? Today, as I was driving up in the parking lot, I saw 2 of our students quizzically wondering, how come I got a parking space so easily today? They thought they won the lottery. I opened my window and I said, ladies, the college is closed today, don't you know? And they said, no. I said, well, I'm the president of the college. I'm going to give you the day off. Go home and study. So communications. The third challenge that we have is breaking down the silos, developing priorities, and an educational master plan. Some type of strategic plan, a North Star that we need to have as we shrink and as we grow, so that it's not accidental, it's not so-called political, it's not biased, it's a plan that is developed through the collaboration and the shared governance process of the college, and that we own it. And that will be the plan that we use in order to tell us where we need to go. Thank you. And the plan, simply put, is what do we teach, how do we teach it, when do we teach it, and how much of it we teach, you know? And I remember, you'll hear this saying a lot from one of my faculty members when I was in graduate school, Robert Reich, who is now at Berkeley in public policy. I hope to invite him up here sometimes. And he would say, Frank, where you stand depends on where you sit. Where you stand depends on where you sit. And I think we have the ability to look at the silos that we know exist, whether it's in student services, instruction, or whatever component you're in, and really sit back and try to figure out how are we going to position Santa Rosa Junior College to be a really great college that's going to meet the needs, present and future, for our community and for our students. And one of the ways I'm going to help with that is to empower all of you to do 2 things that I'm going to recommend to my VPs, because I can boss VPs around, but I can't boss faculty around. One is I'm going to ask for a paper reduction act, okay? I've asked Doug, our VP of Business, and Scott Conrad to look at how can we move toward a paperless operation here. Because if we're going to embrace sustainability, we need to go paperless, okay? And we also need to free up my administrators and my faculty from shuffling paper and being compliance people to being creative people. Yeah. This is a college. This is a college where we need to have time for reflection and thoughtfulness and a way to really figure out how do we be creative and not have to shuffle paper, for lack of better terms. And I want to do that without sacrificing fiscal conservatism, fiscal responsibility, and fiscal accountability. So just because there will be maybe 3 approvals rather than 6 approvals, but we're going to still hold you accountable for your name on that paper, okay? The other areas we want to look at is our shared governance system. We want to make the shared governance system, really embrace AB 1725 and shared governance, but we want to use it in a way that's going to matter. We want to use it in a way that's going to be efficient so that we have some level of guidance in terms of where we're going. And I'm not saying that the shared governance system doesn't work here. I'm saying we just need to crank it up so it works for our college in terms of areas such as the Student Success Task Force, which many of you have heard about. So I've asked my vice presidents of instruction, Mary Kay and Ricardo in Student Services, as they've done already, to really engage the college community, students and faculty about how are we going to use this Student Success Task Force and some of those recommendations, some of which we like and some of which we don't, but the ones that we embrace, let's use that as a way and a platform to increase students so they can get to where they want to go. You'll hear this again from me, if I learned nothing else in my 2 years in Washington, it was as time is the enemy. The longer our students are at this college, the less chance they have to complete and get a degree and a certificate. So we have to look at ways to make it more easy but challenging for them to come out and finish and complete with a degree and a certificate. We have to look at prior learning assessments. We have to look at competency-based learning. We have to look at ways, better articulation with our 4-year partners, with our K-12 partners. So these are things that I'm not going to tell you you have to do or how to do it. These are things that I think that the reason you hired me is I learned some things in my 20 years in community colleges and my last 2 years at the federal level that we need to look at in order to maintain our greatness. I think we also need to look at alternative funding sources. We cannot rely on the state of California to continue to carry the load, and they won't. That's what you're feeling right now. And 46 states out of 50 in the United States have declined their support for public education. 46 out of 50. So California, I have a national perspective that allows me to say that California is just not unlike other states. And the average was 7.6% decrease in funding from states to public education. This trend line, I don't believe is going to change. Our neighboring states in Arizona, they are now at 7% state funding. 7% at a time when they used to be at close to 75%. So they become state funded to what they jokingly say, we're state located, you know? And I do not want Santa Rosa to be in that position. I think there's enough brain power in this room and enough will that Warren Root in his evaluation to me said, when do we start? I say we start today, okay? I say we start today because that's what we need to do, not just for your own departments and not just for your own faculty, but really for the community and for our students. And so I think I'm going to really try to empower our administrators to really put on different lenses, to look at what's made us great, and to be honest with each other about what we need to do during these times of diminishing resources. I mean, I am committed to access. Access is threatened virtually by the fact that we have students who can't get into sections that they need to go in order to move on, you know. What makes this college great is that the children of farm workers can go to school with the children of farm owners. You know? And we really need to continue to fight very hard, because the children of farm workers is going to have a much harder time to come to school because of financial aid, lack of resources, and first-generation college goers. So we really need to focus on all of the community. And I'll just close with a quote that Joe Biden shared with us in a meeting, is that education really, he said, Frank, education's about turning mirrors into windows. Education's about turning mirrors into windows. And I thank you, because that's what you do every day in your classrooms. That's what you do in the library, in the counseling facilities. That's what you do at the Petaluma campus, at the public safety campus in Windsor, at Schoen Farm, at the Southwest campus in Roseland, you know, and all throughout our communities. So thank you for turning education for our students from mirrors to windows. Have a great day. Thank you.